So I guess we're live. So hi everyone, let me open the slides so we actually have something to speak to. Thank you for being here. But first things first, if you can write down where you're from and say hi, that would be great so we know that you're here with us. Okay, we've got Jacob, thank you.
I'll get it started here.
Okay, I'll put mine. Okay, so we've got Andre here from Portugal. I guess there are a few others. Ireland. Okay. So what we're going to talk today is understanding call center agents network. And in a sense, what we're going to do is look at what happens when we start moving call center agents to start working from home and what that brings with it. We're using Crowdcast for this. There is a place for questions on the sidebar. You can click the buttons there. One of them has this question mark on it. If you put questions there, we'll answer them as we go along, usually towards the end of this thing. And you can also place your questions in the chat or just say hi. My name is Tsahi Levent-Levi. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Spearline. And with me this time is Jacob Rivers.
Hi, Jacob Rivers, Director of Network Engineering at Talkdesk.
Okay. And the reason I'm happy to have you here is because at the end of the day, I can speak up until next week about the need for work from home and agents and dealing with them. But I know about a quarter or even less than what you know because you do that on a day-to-day basis with them. So this is what we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about the network challenges, what exactly it means, and what happens when you put WebRTC in these environments, and how that changes everything for call center agents. We're going to look at different and tricky network configurations and how they affect the quality of the calls, and we're going to try to pinpoint these issues faster. And we'll start with the challenges. If we look today at the networks, they are very different than what they've been pre-pandemic. So up until 2019, if we thought about a business, what we've had was, a small number of office locations. If you look at Spearline, we have 3 offices across the globe, maybe more, but actual physical large offices, 3 of them. I've been to bigger companies with more offices, but usually the number would be, you can count most of them in 2 hands or maybe get to 100, and that's about it. And if you have an IT person that needs to deal with agents, this agent would sit in a few locations or a single office location. And then catering for that network or troubleshooting it means looking at a very specific location and focusing on that. Throughout the pandemic, that changed and everyone went working from home. And now we're back, but not exactly. A lot of these call centers still need to treat this with employees have their own offices in their own home. And now instead of having to deal with 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 offices, I need to deal with a number of offices that is the same number or even more than the number of actual employees that I have in my business. If you talk about call center agents, they might be working full-time from the office, but more often than not, some of them at least would work from home at least some of the time. And if they work from home, this is another office that we need to deal with and we need to take into account. What does it mean exactly? Okay, if you think about it from the point of view of WebRTC, and I'll try to break down what we do with WebRTC on the application level, then we have 4 different actors in this game that we play with WebRTC. WebRTC allows us to do these kinds of calls through the internet. So we're doing this webinar through the internet using Crowdcast. We essentially use WebRTC from the browser. And call center agents are not that different. They would log in to the CRM and the call center application through the browser usually, at least today. And then there's the application. The application is the call center application itself. That application runs in the browser. and it runs over a network. And it runs on the user device or peripheral, one that he has selected to use in his home. I can decide to use this headset or the one that I'm using here, or I can go, extreme with this microphone if I want to, which I use for recording lessons and other types of recordings. Okay, so these users are going to have very different devices with them. And one thing that we need to understand is that we're not in control of a lot of that. We don't exactly know which browser the user is using. That might change. He might decide to use something else. His network might be different from time to time, and essentially we can't control what he has at home as his network. His device can change. He might work from a laptop, from an iPad, a phone, or a PC, or anything else. And the only thing what we actually control is the application. All the rest we can ask him to do or force him to do, but if he does that or not, that's a totally different question. So once we understand that we are not in control and that a lot of the moving parts that we have in our application are not in our control, it means that if our users have issues, if an agent can't actually connect a call or has issues with quality, then we need to help him in analyzing and understanding the issue to be able to solve it with him. Okay? And our goal there and the name of the game is how fast we can analyze his problems and provide a solution for him. Otherwise, he won't be able to do the work that we need him to do. So I guess I can stop blabbering and we can just jump into a demo.
Yeah, let me do some show and tell here. Let me share my screen here. All right, can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so what we have here is sort of what we put together, leveraging testRTC to give our customers insight or tool to give insight to what's happening at the agent location. So let me go ahead and start this because this is going to take a few minutes, and I'll kind of talk through a couple different stages of where we leverage this tool. Most dominantly, we leverage this tool during implementation. So the sales has closed the deal, customers are getting implemented. We use this tool during implementation really to give some forecasting of what the user experience is going to be when they get onto our platform. So we talked about all these agents going out of that brick and mortar call center. They're all working remotely. Not only are they working remotely, they're working remotely and globally. So we leverage this tool to give us insights on what's happening at the agent's network so that we can provide guidance and suggestions and recommendations. It's also not uncommon for us to use this in a pre-sales environment. We have a lot of customers that are going from on-prem solutions where they supported remote workers coming in through their data center. Now they're looking for that SaaS provider, that cloud provider to give them the service. We offer this tool during that pre-stage or pre-sales to see what changes have to be made in their network to allow this traffic to function correctly in a contact center world being hosted in the cloud. And then lastly, this is a great tool for after our customers go live, where customers may not necessarily need the implementation team to help them spin up a new call center or new agents. However, we can still give them the tools in hand to get those insights to see how those agents are performing. So we do the best we can to give them that white glove service and trying to catch things before they go live. But once they go live, they can still leverage this tool to help serve their needs when they're making changes to the network or adding agents in their environment. So this is go ahead.
I guess that essentially when there is someone that you need to understand more about his network or environment, what you do is you end up sending him this link.
So we depending on where it is, if it's in the pre-sales, we will send them this link. Even post-implementation, they will leverage this link, and this link is available on our knowledge article. During implementation, we'll actually set some parameters in there, and I'll show you that later on in the presentation, where we can provide a special link, and that special link just helps us when we do webhook collection of this data to look at mass amount of agents for one particular customer and create an assessment for that party. Okay. So here we got some results, and I'm going to break down these results even more as we continue forward, sort of what I focus on, which boxes I focus on here. But the idea here is to give, we want to see green. Green is a good indication that this workstation has good connectivity to our backend environment. It has good connectivity to our voice gateway that it looked up through GLL. We see good download speeds, good jitter. Everything is green and pretty here. We do have some thresholds built in here that are discussed in our KB article. If it's amber or if it's red, what does that mean? And what does that mean in terms of conversation that we have with them? The information displayed here too, this is really centered to give the agent who may not be a very technical resource some visuals that they might understand clearly. You can actually click on the log tab here and get way more detail into what else is being tested, and all this information is collected on our end, and we pull it together to really do an analysis on the customer's behalf to help guide them there. With that, I don't know if you want to take back control here and we can go through some of the slides I put together for today.
Okay. So let's continue. So you run this, the agents go, they run it, you get it in the backend, and then you look at the results. Can you share a few of the examples that you have?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and get started here with lockdown connectivity. This is one we're seeing more and more. And this is a good use case of prem-based customers that are going to the cloud. They've locked down their environment. They control everything that's happening in the environment to stay within the environment. And so what we have here is a great example of pre-sales, giving a link to a customer, and we're seeing they're blocking UDP. We see them blocking TCP. They're only allowing secure connections out of their network. And not only that, if you look at the DNS lookups, which in there we have 24 defined URLs that are unique to our environment, 22 of the 24 are failing to even resolve. So they are likely very locked down. They're going to have to make some rule changes before they get into testing the actual contact center solution here. So without us having to do any kind of special account setup, we gave them a tool that's giving them these insights. Before you guys move forward, you're going to have to make some changes to your environment. And this is what we're trying to do at the sales level to prepare them for that implementation so that their implementation is a smooth transition and positive. So let's go ahead and look at another example here. Web filtering and hosted services. And I'm not saying here we have these are two different tests, by the way, but one's coming back with Microsoft Azure, one's coming back with Zscaler. And I'm not saying that this means it's going to be bad, but these are usually flags for us indicating a conversation we have to have. When I see an agent running a test and they're coming back with Microsoft Azure, they're doing maybe one of two things stands out. They could be running a VDI environment, which is a virtual desktop environment, and that can introduce its own audio artifacts to the picture. So when they're running this test tool from a VDI, the test tool is actually running just from the VDI to our environment. So the voice metrics that we're getting there may not be a true reflection of what the agent experience would be, because we're not getting the audio generated from the agent environment, whether they're on Wi-Fi, whatever network they might be on a LTE hotspot.
So I guess in the VDI, what happens is the call center and this tool would run on a cloud-hosted machine in front of your cloud service, so one cloud in front of the other. And then the link that we want to look at, which goes from, let's say, their cloud, in this case, Microsoft Azure, to the actual user at home, is not even tested because that's out of scope of WebRTC in this case and of anything else that we're trying to actually go and measure.
That's right. So when customers are leveraging these VDI environments, the VDI of choice is doing its own voice compression, its own transport from the agent workstation, then client, all the way into that data center. We're losing that visibility. And all this means from this point is it just drives our conversation we're having with the customer. So, hey, when we asked you to run this test and we looked at the results, this is what we're seeing. These are some of the impacts that may be experienced when you go live. And we also will try to see if there's an option of going around it if possible. The other touch point I want to mention here is here we see Zscaler which is a proxy service provider. It's a service provider that adds enhanced security. And we're not saying that this is going to cause absolute destruction of the solution. However, they may need to do some tweaking in their Zscaler environment for this test to be successful working, to make sure it's being optimized. One thing we would look for, and we'll go into this. In fact, I think it's the next slide. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide here. Locations. One thing you did not see on that visual screen is that this test tool did a ping to all the different AWS regions, the popular regions, and these are regions that we have voice presence in. What we're looking for here is the agent that ran this test, were they expected to connect to this particular region, and what was the latency measurements of the other regions? What we're looking for here is maybe a proxy server or a service being implemented in the network. Maybe it's a VPN that's forcing these. A great example would be Philippines getting VPN tunneled all the way to the US, and they're resolving US. And in this test, we see great latency measurements to Singapore or Tokyo, but their audio is connecting to the US. And these are the things we're trying to look for when we're looking at these results. These pings are not visually represented. I think this is more just something we do on our back end, that we check to make sure that it did pick the right data center and move forward. And the data is there for those that are more technical. But on that first screen that's visually pleasing, it's really meant for the agent to have a good, clear understanding. Is everything green or is things red? Should there be concerns? Let's go ahead and move forward. And I don't know if our screen changed. I see you and I, or it's like our screen sizes are all the same. Wait. Luckily, I opened the presentation on my side monitor here, so I can read what's on these slides here. Oh, perfect, thank you. Here's another great thing. So this is running a speed test, and when you look at this speed test, and this is just real data that we're getting here. We're looking at a couple things. One, our recommendations for our environment is 1 meg up, 1 meg down. And that's just to service the contact center piece of everything that the agent's doing. So here we have a scenario, 3 megs up, 7 megs down. You say, well, this should be a great experience. Well, the other thing we're noticing in here is there's a lot of jitter. And jitter, when it comes to voice traffic, is not best friends. You're going to get a lot of packet loss. You're going to get choppy audio. You're going to get distortion in that audio. And likely the jitter is being caused by either a saturated network, or it could be they're just on Wi-Fi. It could be that they're on an LTE access point. And these are the things we're looking for. So this call goes together. So we see that there was high jitter. They did have sufficient bandwidth, but there was high jitter, and they did also experience packet loss. So again, without us having to build this agent out and having to use real world calls, they're running a test from their environment, and we're getting these early indicators that there's going to be an issue with this particular agent running this test, whether it's running from a brick and mortar site, or if they're working from home, or if they're working from a coffee shop. We're getting those insights so we can try to take action before they go live, before they put a customer on that call and have a poor experience with that customer. Let's go ahead and move forward here. You mentioned earlier that link, is that just the link we send the customers? And the answer is yes and no. During implementation, we like to insert parameters and provide a unique link to our customers that basically help us on our side filter them out in our spreadsheet. So we have a webhook in the back end, which I love to show. I think it's on the next slide. That will show how these webhooks are working on our environment. But we try to provide a link that will be specific to that customer. We will artificially insert the reason code. And then we can also do things such as targeting data centers. A great use case here is, let's just talk about this in general. So the way our platform works in general is GLL. We leverage global low latency to determine the best data center for that agent to connect to, and we look at those scores. But there's also scenarios where the best data center, because it was low latency to get there, may not be the best data center to serve that agent. And so one of the great things we can do in here is we can insert a parameter and start targeting data centers for that agent to test against. Mm-hmm. A great example of this is we have quite customer presence in South Africa. South Africa will generally resolve Sao Paulo, Brazil, as the regionally appropriate data center for them. However, these agents are taking calls in Europe. So now we're building this triangle of latency, which is not optimum to that customer. So what we would do for that customer is we send them 2 links. We'd have one maybe targeting our Germany location. We'd have one targeting our Ireland location. And we'd have them run the tests, both tests, and see which ones performed better. South Africa can take different routes, and we want to make sure we set the agent up on the best route based on those test results. Another scenario is they might be taking agents in the US, taking calls from the US. So we might target our East and West US locations and see which one performs better for that agent, and then hard code that agent to that region so that's the service they're getting.
I guess that's kind of important because one leg of the call that you have runs on the internet, and that's the WebRTC part of the agent. And the other one is on a PSTN network, on telephony, pure telephony. So if I have the user sitting in Europe and the agent sitting in South Africa, I would rather go direct to South Africa as to Europe, and let's say pay the price of going through the internet there instead of going to a shorter route to a media server that would take me to Brazil, and then from there going back to Europe instead. And this is it's the kind of a triangle that you can't really solve, let's say, it with software that just looks at one of these 2 legs.
That's right. And we might see something even unexpected. We might see lots of packet loss going to Germany and Ireland, and we might decide, you know what, Brazil's not optimized, but it's the best for your use case because we're not going to insert choppy audio. So we're going to look at what's in the best interest of the customer and that agent based on these test results that we're getting, and create that action plan for the customer for their implementation, their go live.
Okay.
All right, great. So the next one is webhooks, and I mentioned webhooks a couple of times here. These tests are being sent out to our customers. The customers are sending them out to their agents. Their agents are running this. And you think, well, how do you look at all this data? They're all web pages. You click through each web page and look at these test results. And the answer is no. On our side, we collect them through webhooks. And in this webhook, it pulls it into a spreadsheet. And from the spreadsheet, we'll parse out different customers, and we will do an analysis on this. So if you don't mind, let's see if you have access to this. You do have access. It's beautiful. Yeah, so this is real data. I've gone ahead and I pasted in 3 examples for me in here, and I've scrubbed out customer names and IPs, just so that we have some real world examples here. Let me open it up on my screen because some of the text is a little blurry there. But in here, and this is a macro we're running on our end, where it's looking for key things. So here in the headset column, which is column H, you see some red, and that red is actually just red because simply it's a wireless headset. This is going to be another conversation or flag we want to call out to that customer saying, hey, we notice you're using wireless headsets. This might be the impact you experience, which is when the battery starts going dead, you're going to start introducing poor audio experience. You may want to make changes. You may want to get them plugged in directly. Again, these are going to be recommendations that we're providing based on information we're observing in these test results. The next column there, we see a lot of Wi-Fi. We actually see unknown Ethernet Wi-Fi is what we're seeing in here. Unknowns could be a VPN. It could be a VDI environment. Unknowns usually get us to ask the question, well, how are your agents connecting? Because our tool could not read the interface, which means there could be multiple interfaces and it wasn't sure which one to grab. But Wi-Fi here is the one that stands out, and that's what we want to talk to them. Wi-Fi is not our recommendation for connecting. However, if they are going to connect through Wi-Fi, we ask that they're either not too many devices on that network. We prefer them to be on the 5 gigahertz band Wi-Fi. So we're using this tool to drive what conversation we need to have with that customer. There's no sense in just sharing every best practice with them when really we need to only have one conversation with them focused on one particular area, and that's what we're using this for. We get the information on IP addresses, which I've just masked out everyone except mine. Feel free to DDoS me if you like, that's fine. I'll just power cycle my cable modem and I'll get a new public IP, which is what I love. Let's scroll over here just a little bit here. Things we're looking for, and again, we'll parse out the customer itself to see what all the agents are doing for that customer. Are all the agents connecting from residential service providers? Are they all connecting through a corporate server? These are the things we're looking for. Here we have a rule that just flags Zscaler. Again, we're not saying Zscaler is bad. We just want to make sure that if there are other things that we're seeing impacting the call, whether it's the call setup, the call quality, we're going to want to have that conversation with, Zscaler might be sending your traffic through an undesirable network path. And these are things that we're just trying to, again, catch and provide recommendations to the customers. If you scroll more to the right, you'll see a lot of just Christmas colors, greens and reds here. This is giving us high level. We're looking at lots of agents. We're looking at packet loss, MOS, round trip delay. And again, we have our own thresholds we set internally. This is a macro we're running on top of the webhook. That's just helping us on our side catch these things, flag them, so that we make sure that when we reach back out to the customer about their test that they ran for us, we can have a conversation that's meaningful, and we back it with data. We don't just have the conversation. We show them the data. We give them the data. So hopefully that they take actions, and we'll keep working with them until this is ideally all green is what we want. And then from there, the expectation is when they do use the contact center WebRTC application we host, that it's going to be a positive experience. And that's what we want at the end of the day. I don't know if anything further right. I scrubbed a lot of stuff. The webhook gives us a lot of data. Again, some of this is what you see in just that first screen that the agent gets. There's other things that are all contained inside that log file. We get all that data in the webhook, and we filter through it and see what stands out to us. The other great thing here is if we scroll all the way back to the left, let's just click on one of my examples from me. If I did want to see what the agent was presented, so maybe the agent saw something and they're talking about it in a case note and we're not understanding what they saw, we can actually click on the hyperlink here, and here, okay, data center selected might not be optimal. So there we go. Okay, I see too what the agent saw, and we can then address what the test did and why it did that. And in this example, this is me out of the US, and I targeted Frankfurt. And here we have a great flag indicating, based on the pings, this was not the optimum data center. However, this is your test results regardless. So this is how we're using this tool.
Okay. So it's interesting. I think we set about starting with you in this journey where the actual request was to build something to troubleshoot, and that's how you started using it. But then it evolved into a tool that you create reports out of for customers where they onboard or check during pre-sale or check post-sale before it's like you do a lot of things with it that are even outside of the pure troubleshooting part, which is, it's kind of great because we didn't understand and know that before you actually came and showed it to us on a previous webinar, which was really, thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And then I think I do have one more slide. This is just sort of what we've been doing this year alone, and we got the results up through September. So when that last slide talking about the webhooks, we get a lot of tests, and we treat everyone as important as the next, and we do an analysis on all of them. So we encourage our customers to use this tool. Again, pre-sales during implementation, we really push hard for them to be testing this before they get on our platform. And then of course in support, they can run this tool again. And these are the test results we're getting, and we're filtering through daily to help customers get to resolutions. What's been great is in the 2 years, I think we went from maybe being tested in 40 countries to 124 countries that we're seeing the tool being run from. So it's very exciting.
It has like a huge number of tests. It's really great.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you've seen here is Talkdesk, who are using our product that is called Quality RTC. As a product, it's fully customizable and brandable. So you get your own landing page. The tests themselves are integrated to your backend. So we test exactly what your customers or agents are going to use at the end of the day. We connect to the data centers, to the IVRs, and to the turn servers that are being used. There's an easy-to-use workflow there that is really configurable to fit the way that you are going to use it in your support team. We have customers that use it in modes of self-first service, and those that block it and send a specific link to invite user to run a specific test. That's the end from my part. I'd like to thank you for being with me, Jacob, and we'll open up the floor for questions. You can put the questions right in the chat, but better would be to go and put it inside the question mark there for the Q&A. That will allow us to actually mark that so that in the recording, you'll be able to go directly to the question. So we have a question from Chris, and I guess that's for you, Jacob. It's like the customers that
you
you
still
asked.
hear me? Because I'm getting a lot of.
Yes, I hear you.
Can you hear me? Because I'm getting a lot of echo back. Okay. All right. Yeah. So from every customer is different, right? We usually have a kickoff call where we discuss the value of the tool, and it's up to them to get their agents to run the tool. We obviously can't force them. The nice thing about this tool, if you notice at the beginning of this call, it takes about 2 to 3 minutes to run. There's nothing more the agent has to do other than type in an email address. We provide the link that populates some of the other fields, and away they go. But it can be a challenge. We have customers that will not run it at all, and then end up running it during a after go live situation where they're trying to overcome some network issues. But generally, it's seen as a positive. We sell why it's positive, what we're looking for, and once we convey that messaging to the right stakeholders, we usually get a lot of cooperation in execution of the testing.
Okay. By the way, Chris, I've seen two types of customers that use it differently. One that what they end up doing is simply they integrated it into their workflow in a way that an agent comes in or user comes in, he tries to connect. If he can't connect, then the URL will appear to him to say, well, you have an issue, go troubleshoot that. And that places it in the point in time where it's like, I can't use it, so what do I do next? We've seen other put the link in their knowledge base, so when they actually go and search for something, they would find the link there and try it out. So there are like different ways to connect and integrate and make that happen. There are those customers, like one that is doing proctoring, where before going and taking an online exam, they would go and test the network to make sure that you have the right connection. And you won't be able to go through the exam without going through that test first. So in some situations, you even gate the service, so that's without that they can't continue. So it really depends on the type of agents or type of users that you're dealing with. Okay, there's a storm on Jacob's side, which is interesting.
We had the Hurricane Ian, and now we have Hurricane Nicole. That's just not leaving Florida alone. So I apologize. It's me that's causing. I'm getting a lot of distortion. So I hope you hear me now. And if I drop,
we hear you well. You're just fine. Any other questions? Okay, we have something in the Q&A. Let's see. Is there an automated version of this? Is there an agent reporting the consistent but intermittent issues? So yes, in testRTC, we have two types of products. The one that we have called Quality RTC is what you've seen now, which runs on an ad hoc test. I send the link to someone, he runs the test completes, and that's it. The other one is called ProbeRTC, which runs the same set of tests, but instead of that, it will run continuously. If you send it to someone, he can open that as a link in his browser or install a small application if he wants to. And then you can collect data for a few hours or a few days and look at the whole history of that. So you can see how the network behaves over time as well. Okay. Any other question? Okay. So Jacob, thanks for being with us and for doing this with me. It was a real joy. I hope to see you in some other webinar that we'll do.
Sounds great. Thank you. Real honored to be asked to come on here and share. And thank you for this tool, and thank you for your continued support in developing and enhancing this for us and our customers. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, the audience, for being here with us and listening to what we have to say. Bye.